Да, ovdje ide neka muzika u pozadina, za to vikam da je izgasite.
Da, gotovo.
Охлиджани su.
Izgleda.
Treba поинаков да имаш съни в зборе, не те разбира.
Everybody, my name is Igor Boyadjiev. For those who don't know me, I will be the moderator for this session, which name is Frequency Policy for Fast Mobile Broadband. In this session, the presenters here will show you what is happening right now, especially here in Macedonia and Serbia, in the field of implementing new technologies, for example 5G. And also, the first presentation here will be the National Operational Broadband Plan. The presenter will be our colleague from Ministry for Information Society and Administration, Dimitar Bukovalov. That is a document, national document that was adopted by the government of Macedonia in the beginning of this year. So, Dimitar, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. As Igor said, my name is Dimitar Bukovalov. I am head of department for telecommunication in Ministry of Information Society Administration, also team leader for preparation of National Operational Broadband Plan and official contact point for Macedonia for Broadband Competence Office. It's a real challenge to be first with the first presentation after a good lunch. But I hope that with my very short presentation, I will attract your attention and I will give you useful information about National Operational Broadband Plan. In the end of 2017, Minister of Information Society and Administration established several working groups for developing the National Operational Broadband Plan. And before preparation of these documents, detailed mapping was carried out in Macedonia in course of 2011 for fast NGA networks and for ultra-fast NGA networks. Data shows that households coverage with fast broadband networks is 78%, roughly the same as the average of European Union, 80%, but existing coverage for ultra-fast broadband networks is something around 44%, and this number is lower than the EU average. The planned investment in the operators are mostly in ultra-fast NGN networks with particular focus in towns and cities. In this slide, we can see the gray zones, white zones, and borders of municipalities according to the mapping process. Around 31% of total number of households are located in white zones, and around 22% of total number of households are in the gray zones. So also data, if we take into account the previous slide that about the planned investment by the operators, we can see that the main focus, the main digital broadband gap is mainly in the rural area. For that reason, we start preparation of National Operational Broadband Plan, and our main task was this strategy document to be harmonized with EU strategy documents, Digital Agenda, European Gigabit Society, EU recommendation for use for state aid for broadband, 5G action plan, ITU standard recommendation for 5G, and radio spectrum policy group recommendation. It's good to emphasize that before being adopted by the government, National Operation Broadband Plan was submitted for comments to EU and the World Bank. The main pillars of the National Operation Broadband Plan is use of state aid and 5G development plan. About the use of the state aid, with state aid, we will finance missing infrastructure in the two levels, in the national levels, in the backhaul level, and in the local access level. As a working group, we decide to select a public-run municipality network as an investment model for both level, for national level and for local access level. Specific explanation, information why did we choose this investment model you can find in our National Operation Broadband Plan, which is available in our websites in Ministry of Information Society and Administration. On the national backhaul level, about the use of state aid, we plan to construct National Transport Optical Network, NTN, which will connect white zones, justifiable gray zones, public institution, and location for free Wi-Fi internet access points. Construction, development, maintenance, and management of NTN will be responsibility of Public Enterprise MRD. This October, we plan to start prepare the feasibility study for NTN, and while the construction of NTN will begin, according to our plan, will begin in 2020. Public Enterprise MRD will provide to operators leased NTN available optical fibers in order to ensure backhaul connection to their backbone networks to the white zones and justified gray zones. This is very important to emphasize. Nothing else. On the local access level, again, Public Enterprise MRD will construct first mile infrastructure, and this first mile infrastructure, this first mile infrastructure will be optical fiber networks. Public Enterprise MRD in consultation, this is very important to emphasize that Public Enterprise MRD in consultation with the operators will select the business model for the zones, which may be passive layer open model, active layer open model, and 3-layer open model. Again, please, if you want additional information about these 3 business models who are in line with EU recommendation about the business models in white zones, please take into account the text in the National Operation Broadband Plan. Depending on the selected business model, Public Enterprise MRD with the operators will sign the contracts for using the constructed first mile infrastructure. Our national broadband targets are, by the end of the 2029, are all households to have the opportunity to access at affordable price a network that allows download speed at least 100 megabits per second with the possibility to upgrade to gigabit speed. You can see this is the same broadband targets as broadband targets according to the Gigabit Society strategy of European Union. The second national broadband target is at least 50% of the total number of households. Subscriber contracts across the country are for internet access at least 100 megabits per second. This national broadband targets is in line with digital agenda strategy of European Union. And the last, all public institutions have symmetrical internet access with a speed at least 1 gigabit per second. Again, this national broadband targets is the same as the broadband targets according to the Gigabit Society strategy of European Union. In 2025, we expect these results. Share of connected white zones or areas, 70%. Share of connected justified gray zones, 70%. Share of unconnected public institution that will be connected to ultra-fast broadband, 50%. Share of connected location to free Wi-Fi, 50%. Share of households that have the possibility to access to ultra-fast broadband, 60%. In 2018, this number is 43.8%. Households that have the possibility to access ultra-fast broadband will be, our prediction is around 320,000 households, and share of ultra-fast broadband subscription 15%. This is, so I will again say that this is expected result in 2025. 5G development plan is integral part of the National Operation Broadband Plan. And this is a main pillar, one of the main pillars in our strategy. Here in our National Operation Broadband Plan, we define national 5G targets. By the end of 2023, at least one larger city to be covered with 5G signals. By the end of 2025, the main transport corridors should be covered with an uninterrupted 5G signal. By the end of 2027, all cities in the country are covered with an uninterrupted 5G signal, and by the end of 2029, everyone can have the opportunity to access the internet through 5G with a minimum speed of internet access of at least 100 megabits per second. To achieve the national 5G targets, a lot of number of measures are foreseen that can generally be grouped into 3 pillars or 3 subgroups. First is a better regulatory framework. The second is inclusion of vertical sectors, traditional industry and operators. And the third is a harmonized spectrum policy, grant authorization for use of radio frequencies. Allow me now to say a few words about each group of measures. For better regulatory framework, MISA, Ministry of Information Society Administration, in cooperation with Ministry of Transport and Communication Agency, municipalities and energy sector will initiate close cooperation for amending regulation in order to ensure quick and easy obtaining of permission for construction of 5G, joint use of infrastructure, coordination of construction works, simple placement of small cells in urban area, roads and railway corridors, use of free optical fibers for Entium for aggregation links, etc. For inclusion of vertical sector, traditional industry and operators, the ICT Council, in cooperation with Ministry of Information Society Administration, will start close cooperation with the vertical sector, traditional industry and the telecommunication operators in order to sign a memorandum of understanding for 5G development and digital transformation in all spheres of society through the use of 5G technology, possible financing a pilot project, and raising the level of the digital skill in the industry as well as among the citizens. And my last slide about the harmonized spectrum policy, granting authorization for use of radio frequencies, foreseen measures. The tender procedure for granting authorization for use of radio frequency for 700 megahertz band has to be planned for announcement by the end of 2020. The tender procedure for granting authorization for use of radio frequency for 3.6 gigahertz band has to be announced as soon as application is submitted by the interest party. For the 25 gigahertz radio frequency band, if needed, the agency may conduct replanning by 2023 and allocate it for land mobile services. All this measure we created together, Agency for Electronic Communication, they proposed this measure and Ministry accepted all of this. And finally, MISA in cooperation with the agency will launch bilateral meeting with representatives from Albania on the possible signing of a memorandum of understanding on the avoidance of unwanted harmful interference in the radio frequency bands when implementing mobile communication, especially 5G. That's it. Thank you very much. Please do not hesitate to contact me regarding our National Operation Broadband Plan. I will be more than happy to answer all your questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dimitar, for this explanation of this broadband plan. Very impressive and demanding broadband plan, I will say. Naturally, as a continuation of this broadband plan, is that we as a regulatory body taking some of the measures for introduction of 5G, especially in the frequency band of 700 MHz. More about that will show in her presentation our colleague, Mrs. Lidia Paunovska.
Thank you very much, Igor. On behalf of the Agency for Electronic Communications, I wish you a warm welcome here in Ohrid. As Igor has already introduced me, I'm Lidia Paunovska, Head of Broadcasting and Satellite System Division. Main duties of our division are planning and managing of radio frequencies for broadcasting and satellite systems. Today's presentation is about reconstituting the spectrum for broadcasting below 700 MHz band and introducing the digital dividend in the Republic of Macedonia. Now, the presentation will last about 15 minutes, and I'm going to lead you through this presentation with the following agenda. The first introductory part, in the first introductory part, there is an overview for necessity for releasing radio frequency band, and next, topics relevant to terrestrial digital television broadcasting networks. The third part is about releasing 700 MHz band in the Republic of Macedonia, case study. And I have to mention that our division is in a process of intensive international broadcasting coordination. Following that, there is a part for long-term future use of 470, 694 MHz band, that is the frequency band which remains only for broadcasting, and the last, future activities and conclusion. So let's start with the introductory part. I will start with digital transformation. Digital transformation is integration of digital technology in all areas, in all segments of business, and these processes fundamentally changes the organization and, of course, the values which are given to the customers. Digital transformation is also based on the digital economy. Digital economy is characterized by growing the number of interconnected people, organization, and machines using the web and using the digital technologies. Digital economy includes artificial intelligence, includes Internet of Things, robotics, etc. But with the development of digital economy, there is increased need for spectrum available for broadband mobile technologies, but due to the scarcity of frequencies technically suitable for mobile services, the one way for providing radio frequency bands is by releasing radio frequency bands, but these frequency bands now are used for other radio communication services or are already assigned or used by the other radio communication services. The term digital dividend refers to the radio spectrum which is released starting from 470 till 862 megahertz band. This frequency band is subject to Geneva 06 agreement. The process of releasing radio frequency bands starts when 800 megahertz band was released according to the international decisions. This process was known as digital dividend 1. Precisely, the frequency band which was released was 790 till 862 megahertz band. The second step of releasing radio frequency band is releasing the adjacent band to 800 megahertz band, that is 700 megahertz band, but this frequency band is currently used for digital terrestrial television networks. This process is also known as digital dividend 2. The process of releasing radio frequency bands is according to the decisions which are adopted on World Radio Communication Conferences. The first digital dividend is in accordance with the decision adopted on WRC 07 when land mobile service was identified on a primary basis, the same as broadcasting service. This process in the Republic of Macedonia finished in 2014 when we issued the authorization for radio frequency utilization. WRC 20 decided a new allocation for land mobile services also on a primary basis, the same as broadcasting, but this decision came effective after finishing WRC 15. This process is according to the decision 232. In the main studies, in the main period, International Telecommunication Union performed many studies in which it was more than obvious that in this frequency band, mobile services will be introduced instead of broadcasting. But why 700 megahertz band has to be released? That is because of its physical characteristics. The signal is able to penetrate via walls, via buildings. Also, it has possibility to cover large area, and also it has great and especially excellent propagation characteristics. I have to emphasize also that 700 megahertz band is pioneer band for 5G, together with 3438 and 26 gigahertz band. Releasing 700 megahertz band and releasing 800 megahertz band, in total 168 megahertz band, has a great impact on currently working digital terrestrial television networks. For that reason, it was more than obvious that the frequency band, which remains to the broadcasting, 470, 694, has to be replanted. But the process of replanning radio frequency band was under the framework of Geneva 06 agreement. In region 1, there were a few groups were formed. I'm very glad that Mr. Zoran Brankovic is here. Together, we work in a SEDIV group. On this public meeting, I will not talk about the objectives and principles of planning, because I was mentioned about these issues on previous public meetings. I will only like to emphasize that the purpose of SEDIF was to facilitate the process of coordination and negotiation between the member states. For this process, we did many technical activities, which means many technical calculations, technical analysis, and also Soran can confirm that we had many technical negotiation processes in which we try to achieve multilateral compatibility in the frequency bands which remains to broadcasting. But this process finished with signing international framework agreement, multilateral framework agreement, you may see on this picture, was signed in Godolo in December 2017. The picture is from the signing ceremony. Multilateral framework agreement, the member states who signed the multilateral framework agreement, they agreed that they will not confirm any frequency requests which will be sent to the International Telecommunication Union, and requests which will, in accordance with multilateral framework agreement and in accordance with the bilateral meetings, bilateral documents that we signed previously. On this picture you may see Macedonian channels, Macedonian coordinated channels. I have to emphasize that we are really satisfied with the results because firstly 5 layers were allowed, and then we succeeded to coordinate 7 layers. This is very important, taking into the account that in Macedonia 7 multiplexes are in operation and 7 layers are coordinated. This is the fact that important for the operators, because somehow we postponed the process of introducing the new standard, DVB-T2, but in the first moment. According to the multilateral framework agreement and according to the decision, European decision, which is implemented in the multilateral framework agreement, that is European decision, you may see the number of the European decision. In this decision is defined the deadline for releasing radio frequency band, 700 radio frequency band, that is 30th of June 2020. For that reason, Broadcasting Division developed technical study in which we analyzed current situation and future activities which have to be taken in the next period. Together, we, as Agency for Electronic Communication, initiated meetings with the holders of authorization for radio frequency utilization, Public Enterprise, Macedonian Broadcast, and OneWeb. And together, we agreed on new channel distribution. So, together, we developed planning activities, retune schedule activities, and so on. I would like to use also this opportunity to thank to all involved, to all participants, for their cooperation and for mutual understanding, just to meet the deadline, 30th of June 2020. Ongoing activities already started. OneWeb modified channels in 2 allotment zone. The process started in April 2019, and we expected this process to continue till August 2019 and finished till the end of the year. On this picture, you may see channel distribution until April 2019, and channel distribution which will be until 30th of June 2020. But we expected this distribution to be finished until the end of the year. And some words about international broadcasting coordination. I previously mentioned that Broadcasting Division is in a process of intensive international coordination activities. First of all, I would like to emphasize that we changed the first approach of the Geneva 06 plan. Firstly, we have only allotments, but now we do not have only allotments, we have also allotments and assignments. During the last year, Broadcasting Division succeeded to record in Geneva plan 5,095 assignments and allotments. For those who are involved in these planning processes, they already know that for each request, that for each notice, many technical calculations and many analyses have to be performed and sent to the administration, not only neighboring, but in the coordination area, and that results not to be objected by the International Telecommunication Union. So this was a very hard job. Also, we succeeded to put in Master International Frequency Register 690 assignments. That means that not only that means rights, but also obligation for each administration. And some words about long-term future use of the rest of the frequency bands which remains to broadcasting. That is the frequency band 470, 694 megahertz band. After completing the process of releasing 700 megahertz band, the band which remains only for broadcasting will be 470, 694 megahertz band, in which broadcasting will be only on a primary basis. For that reason, and because European countries, they rejected the idea for future decrease of the frequency band, for that reason, on the next World Radio Communication Conference in 2019, there will be no agenda item for future degrees of this frequency band. So, in the meantime, ITU will perform many studies about review of the remaining frequency band, and also what will happen, if some other part will be released for mobile purposes, but the decision will be in 2023. For that reason, broadcasting is safe in this frequency band until 2030. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation, hoping that the process of releasing radio frequency band, 700 frequency band, will end it till the end of the year, and on that way, we will meet the deadline, which is defined in the European decision, 30th of June 2020. Also, at the beginning of the next year, as Dimitar also said, we will start the administrative procedures for starting the tender procedure for issuing authorization for radio frequency utilization in 700 MHz bands, and also we have to think about moving to another technology, because as maybe you are informed that in Macedonia DVB-T standard is used, but now we have to move as soon as possible to DVB-T2 standard. That's all for me, and questions are also allowed for the end of the session.
Thank you, Lydia, for the exhaustive explanation about activities in 700 MHz band. The next presentation will be done by the Dean of the Faculty of Informatics on Mother Teresa University in Skopje, Mr. or Professor Stoyan Kitanov. He'll show us something about 5G technology, maybe from some other
academic perspective.
Academic perspective, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Igor. My name is Stoyan Kitanov, and I'm assistant professor at the Faculty of Informatics and Mother Teresa University, and also Dean. My presentation is about 5 technology enablers, regulatory environment, and business models. The content is about introduction, key technologies that will enable 5G, 5G radio access network architecture extensions, topology flexibility, regulatory environment, it is the spectrum, and at the end, 5G business models and conclusion. Regarding the 5G, it's an acronym that stands for the 5th generation of mobile networks, and that is the latest technology standard for mobile communications. It is predicted that it will have 3 uses: massive mobile connectivity, which will enable enhanced mobile broadband, massive type communications between the devices, and ultra reliable and low latency communications. And it will have different uses in high-speed trains, 50 megabits per second everywhere, and so on. The roadmap towards 5G, most of you know, just at the moment we are in the phase of, I can say that we're in the phase of trials, and in some countries it's already started the deployment. From the previous colleagues and also from last years, we know that 5G in Macedonia will be deployed around after 2020. And also in Macedonia, it's already, I just got information that Macedonian Telecom or Hello had already done some tests in 5G, probably with other operators also. The key technologies from 5G technology services is, and the challenges which are inherited is less bandwidth. So the bandwidth which can be solved with millimeter waves. Also the large number of base stations. We sold more cost-effective solution which will be provided by the massive deployment of small cells. Massive MIMO, which will increase higher efficiency, user throughput, and lower latency. The same is with the beamforming, where we have focused data stream to particular users, and the full duplex mode, which will transmit and receive in both sides at the same time between the users. In 5G, with the radio access architecture, it's the massive MIMO, which will have a large number of pairs that will increase the bandwidth up to sub-6 gigahertz bands. Millimeter waves, which will provide access to broad frequency bands for higher bandwidths, beamforming. Shortened TTI, which reduces the latency, and the flexibility in band sizing, which allows previously unavailable bands to be used. Other run innovations are small cell support, which will provide greater indoor coverage, 5G new radio in unlicensed bands, which means extension of the mobile system, device-to-device communication, vehicle to vehicle or to humans connections, which will enable direct communication with no network interaction. The 5G topology flexibility is the migration of the cloud computing to the radio access from the core network to the radio access network, or even to the edge of the network, cloud run, and mobile edge computing and fog computing, which will reduce the network latency. It will improve the network, the user throughput. I have done this in my doctoral dissertation, particularly evaluated the quality of service aspects, and better results are achieved with fog computing if compared than the cloud computing. And split between the control and the user plane, which we have we have a split of these functions. Regarding the regulatory environment for 5G, I would just say that it is already stated in the 5G action plan, and also by the previous colleagues. The bandwidths are 700 megahertz bandwidth, 3.6 gigahertz, and 26 gigahertz bandwidth had been identified as the key bandwidths at the moment. In the future, from 66 up to 71 gigahertz, the bandwidth which will be used for future needs if the 26 gigabit bandwidth is exhausted. Regarding the business model, we have two types of business models. Both business models which are service related, and later in the following slides you'll see network related. So one of the service related model is services which will be offered to differentiated services offered to the users. At the present there is no differentiation, and with 5G in the future it is expected to be intermediary devices to recognize the services between the business users and consumer users. It will be new opportunities from increased demand for connectivity. So the mobile either will be, at the present it's directly with mobile operators, has a spectrum allocation and vertical to embedded connectivity. And also we have in the future itself, in 5G we have self-provision of using dedicated or shared spectrum for vertical or original equipment manufacturers. And another option is to have a joint venture between a vertical or original equipment manufacturer and the mobile operators to provide increased demand for embedded connectivity, and also later with fixed operators also is that it is possible. From 5G models regarding the network related aspects, we have at the present we have the mobile network operator is completely controlling the site, and in 5G we have possibly small sites that can be privately owned, and also with there can be network neutrality, which will be intermediate devices or functions, which will be between different mobile network operators, and who will control the physical access or the medium which is used for transmission of the network. And convergence of fixed wireless access mobile network operator and PPDR provision. We have other aspects in this screen, we have infrastructure sharing. This convergence can be also for cost and benefit sharing for example, in investment of the network or development of the services. And at the end, as a conclusion, you can say that 5G, when it will be completely deployed, it is expected to act as the nervous system of the digital society, economy, and everyday people's life. The cloud will be diffused between the client devices with mobility, and the cloud will become a fog. And more augmented and virtual network functionality will be existed in 5G or executed in 5G network, and like that it will be provided more ubiquitous service to the users, which will enable new anything as a service paradigms where the devices, terminals, machines, and also smart things and also robots will become innovative tools that will produce and use applications, services, and data. Small cells will be also extremely deployed, will be needed to achieve higher data rates and 5G. Fog computing also to reduce the network latency, the delay. And the main driver for in the near future will be evolved mobile broadband services. And that will be everything for this presentation, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Professor. The next presentation is by Mr. Zoran Brankovic from Ratel about spectrum issues related to 5G.
Good afternoon to everybody. Let me as a first introduce myself. I'm Zoran Brankovic. I'm coming from Regulatory Agency of Electronic Communications and Postal Services, Republic of Serbia, and my position is head of Radio Communication Division. As a first, I want to thank you to Lydia for reminding me to 2 years work in a SEDIF group with very successful results. And once again, thank you, Lydia, for you and for Peter. He is in here. Thank you, Peter. And I will begin my presentation. Today's presentation should show some our view or vision of using frequency bands from 5G technology in Europe in near future, as well as the plans of Republic of Serbia in that direction. You will agree with me that today is very difficult to say something new about frequency band already dedicated for 5G in Europe, but especially when the results of new WRC conference are expected at the end of this year. Regardless of that, for Europe, the situation is more or less clear for using frequency band for 5G technology in the near future. And this presentation will show how the regulatory agency of Republic of Serbia follow all instructions and trends in that for that topic. As the first, I have to apologize for some of my introductory slides, which are well known for the most of you here, but this is only an introduction, just to see a complete picture of the problem. We know that benefits of 5th generation wireless network technologies are very wide. On this slide, you can see only 3 of them. This is a transformative role in our daily lives, bringing us plenty of new services, 5G wireless network technologies will be a major driver of economic growth and serving social needs. And very big important is a role in digitizing industry, especially for verticals. My previous presenter said something about enablers for 5G, but I have to mention that the basic precondition for faster 5G development is access and availability of appropriate spectrum bands. Very important enablers are, as you can see, needs for network modernization, demands for additional capacity, increasing of productivity, quality with regards to industrial automatization and so on. Regarding barriers, there are a lot of barriers, we have to admit. First of them is, for example, spectrum license price, with the impact of that for forecasting return of investments time frame from operators. After that, we don't have now no fully identified 5G use cases. Very significant issue in some European regions might be the spectrum coordination and the risk of interference with non-EU countries, especially for 700 MHz band. We overcome that problem. You know, Serbia is not an EU country, but during the SEDIF negotiations, we overcome that situation with our neighbors. And at the end, we have to admit the 5G technology looking for the now is not yet mature enough. The main responsibility of national regulatory agencies is creating an incentive regulatory environment for 5G. It means that environment regarding the spectrum, security, net neutrality, cost reduction, roaming, impact of customers, and so on. We must mention results of work Radio Spectrum Policy Group and three opinions of that group. The last one was in January this year, which is adopted high-level recommendations for policymakers on 5G strategic issues, and that recommendations includes these three of them. According to 5G action plan from European Commission, we have to can see here some timeline that the end of this year is a target for finishing 5G standardization, spectrum allocations, assignments, national 5G roadmaps, cross-border pre-commercial trials. Everything must be done according to this EU action plan at the end of this year. Common target for 5G launched in all member states is the end of the next year. And 5 years after that action plan forecasting that 5G will be everywhere in Europe. There are some well-known things regarding the spectrum for 5G in European countries. Primary bands suitable for the 5G introductions are 700 MHz, 3.5 GHz band, and later on 26 GHz. As you know, a number of European countries have already performed spectrum auctions. Some others are preparing to do so no later than 2022. And very interesting thing is that spectrum auctioned on a technology-neutral basis without exception, meaning that the licensing can be used the spectrum with the other technologies as well. And finally, no other bands should be excluded in the future, which is related to the technology and service neutrality. It means the 900, 1800, 2100, 2600 MHz bands, and these bands under review to develop technical conditions suitable for 5G too. This figure shows currently using frequency band in this year. There are frequency bands for 2G, 3G, 4G, and at the end of 2020, frequency band for 5G will be 700 megahertz, 1.5 gigahertz, 3.5 gigahertz, and 26 gigahertz bands. Frequency band for further study and consideration for 5G are 2.3 to 2.4 megahertz, and very interesting millimeter wave bands according to the results of a conference at October and November this year. WRC-19 regarding millimeter wave bands in resolution 238 dedicated some bands for using for 5G. There's two groups of bands, and for now CIPT refers priority bands according to the CIPT roadmap, 5G roadmap. There are only 3 frequency bands, 24.25 to 27.5 gigahertz, 40 to 43.5 gigahertz, and 66 to 75 gigahertz band. These millimeter wave bands are very interesting because they offer especially unlicensed millimeter wave spectrum, because in some studies this is pointed as a frequency band which lead us to next generation of mobile. It means 6G. We still are talking about 5G, but there are some ideas how to improve 5G to the next generation. And the second part of this presentation, I am going to explain some regulatory aspect for 5G in the Republic of Serbia. There are some crucial documents which will regulate that topic. The first of them is law, electronic communication law. For adopting that law, of course, responsible is the National Assembly, and adoption of new law is expected this year. And the public consultation of the text of that law was last year. The second document is a radio frequency allocation plan. Responsible for adopting is the government. New or proposed radio frequency allocation plan is submitted by RATEL to the ministry in January this year. It is expected to be adopted in the near future. The third document is radio frequency allotment plans after adopting the radio frequency allocation plan. After that, next document is a rule book on the minimum requirements for issuance of individual licenses for radio frequency, adopted by Ministry of Trade, Tourism and Telecommunication. After fulfillment of the conditions for spectrum selling, this is information provided by RATEL to the ministry. Finally, spectrum auction or award procedure must be performed by RATEL, and spectrum assignment to the winners of spectrum auction performing by RATEL too. This picture shows current usage of the frequency band in the Republic of Serbia, distribution of sub-bands for our 3 operators, Telekom, VIP, and Telenor. We have some unused frequency bands. This is 2.6 gigahertz. And for now, we don't have interest of our operators for buying that part of the spectrum. In the next slides, I will show you frequency band which are in proposed of our frequency allocation plan. First of them is 700 MHz band. We propose to our ministry to adopt that proposal that frequency band we will use for mobile fixed communication networks, 2 times 30 MHz FDD, and there is 15 MHz for supplementary downlink. And part of this band we propose to be used by broadband PPDR services, 2 times 5 plus 2 times 3 megahertz. Current radio allocation plan is without mobile fixed communication network in that band, and conditions for using that frequency band for mobile is adoption of new radio frequency allocation plan, which is in procedure. After that, adoption of the radio frequency allotment plan and implementation of multilateral framework agreement mentioned by Lydia, and bilateral agreements on frequency coordination on digital terrestrial television in the frequency band 470 to 694 MHz as a result of SEDIF. As a result of SEDIF, target for cleaning of that frequency band from digital television is the end of 2020, and after that, according to the bilateral agreements, all neighbors of Republic of Serbia will not have any digital television transmission in operation. 800 MHz is already used for our mobile. 2.5 gigahertz currently in current radio frequency allocation plan is without mobile fixed communication network. In our proposal with that. 2.6 gigahertz, there is no changes. We are only expected our operators to show interest for buying that part of spectrum. 3.5 to 4 to 3.8 gigahertz band is dedicated to the mobile fixed communication network, and there is no changes in new radio allocation plan. 26 gigahertz is in our proposal for mobile fixed communication network, and method of issuing licenses is public bidding. Because we are in finishing regulatory documents, we hope in this year, RATEL started preparations for future spectrum auctions. In the process of preparation feasibility study with the selection of the optimal spectrum auction model for existing and the future 5G technologies, which is ongoing. The most of input parameters for that feasibility study are positive practice of spectrum auctions in European countries as a first, then the ratio of the existing quantity of spectrum and needs for more spectrum for the implementation of 5G positive practice in European countries, and analysis of needs of operators in Serbia for additional spectrum in frequency band for existing and new 5 technologies. The main findings of the feasibility study should be creating a proposal for combination of blocks of interest for operators depending on the existing spectrum possession and technical demands for 5G implementation. Then auction of one of frequency band. It means separately 700, 2.6 gigahertz, 3.5 gigahertz, and the final result will be suggestion for optimal spectrum auction model. In the case of a multiple frequency band auction, it means combined auction. We also trying to find optimal spectrum auction model for that case. And one part of this feasibility study will be defining the practical conditions for performing the auction. It means technical conditions, physical, software, security, legal aspect, financial aspects, and so on. And as one conclusion, on this slide is an unofficial roadmap for launching 5G in Serbia. Everything leads that unofficial roadmap one day will be official. And tasks are new electronic communications law, adoption planned in this year, radio frequency allocation plan adoption as well in this year, radio frequency allotment plans in the next year, then rulebook of the minimum requirements for the issuing of individual licenses for radio frequency. It is planned for two next years. Spectrum awards procedure or spectrum auctions next year, spectrum assignments to the winners next year, and possible start of implementation 5G 2020 or 2021 or 2022, we will see. That will be all for my side. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Mr. Brankovic, for your such a nice presentation, I will say. And the last but not at least is Mr. Dragan Mushkinja from Netra. He will show some smart solutions in spectrum management.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good day to all. My name is Dragan Mushkinja. I am a project manager in Netra, Macedonia, a telecommunication management company that basically deals in some area with the spectrum management. So today's presentation, I'll try to keep it really fast because I'm last and people are getting tired. The idea is to show basically a smart solution for spectrum management, actually how LS Telecom views that as a company that majorly works with spectrum management software, and some of the regulators here already using some of that software. The idea is basically that all the data compiled into this software will allow the agency to do all of the work from one digital workplace. So this is the idea is to perform all of the tasks which are related to that agency. And the idea is that all of these tasks are as much as possible first of all, reflect the workflow of the agency, and then it's as more as possible fully automated. So it leaves the agency more space to deal with the, let's say, more complex licensing processes. There are several parts of that software which are more or less already known, but if some people are using it. So we still have Spectra Plan and Spectra EMC, which are the core of the frequency assignment and frequency planning, and then the licensing process, and then it's basically upgraded with the monitoring part and the spectrum enforcement part. So the idea is that the host platform is web-based. It's basically you don't have to use any let's say middleware like it is right now. You use Java and then it generates some issues with updates and stuff. Now also the very frequently used word is that the solution is completely cloud-based, and it should be cloud-based. Whether it's on-site, on-premises cloud, or cloud is leased somewhere, all computational power should be on the cloud. Also, the solution is truly business process driven. It's basically being made on a business driven platform. So it actually follows the workflow process of the agency completely. And it should allow a really high level of automation. So basically the process of applying to license to the process of getting the back end result as a license and the invoice is basically fully automated. And of course, it should be basically integrated with some of the assets that the agency already had, especially when we are thinking about the spectrum monitoring assets or some other third-party software that they are regularly using in their normal routine, such as, I don't know, document management system and applications like that. There are three major parts into this system, and the first one would be the portal, the front end of the business community, of the people applying to the licenses to the system. Then on the back you will have the office part, which is more or less as it is right now, although it's also completely in most of the cases fully automated. And then the third part would be the information part, the info part, which most of the agencies still use. They still have some sort of portal which allows the public, the common people, to take some glimpse into the spectrum allocation and which channels are used, which are the operators, all of the information which should be publicly available. And in the back you have all the processing power. So this is the portal. This is we had previously presentations about digitization, about how you should allow the common people applying in business applying to a license to communicate through a digital portal. And this is actually what it allows that. It allows you to apply for the license. It allows you to see which licensing you are holding. It allows you to make some compliance, have your own dashboard of the applied licenses and how they are valid, and all of the information which is generally useful to the people utilizing the spectrum. And then, of course, and on the office side, you have all the processes which are inside the agency, which are allowing for the licenses, for the applications to be evaluated, technically evaluated, examined, checked through the information which they are getting from their monitoring devices, and overall, let's say, information that they have about the potential interferences, and also all other things which are related to generating the invoice, generating the potential documents, and things like that. Also, as I said, the last part of that is the portal to the common citizens, where they can see the spectrum, the frequency allocation, who has portions of the frequency, where are the sites located, if such information should be available to the public, and all other open public data in terms of the validity of the information. And basically, some of this information already being, for example, here in Macedonia, available to the public through the e-agency portal. The thing is now that instead of having more than one platform dealing with that, you have everything in one package. And this is basically how it looks. On the one side, you have the possibility to create, modify, cancel, or renew applications while on the other side is basically the whole software, which is basically business process model that allows you through to configure the whole process of getting the license according to the business model that the agency has, and basically make that process as much automated as possible, so that the most of the licenses are basically being automatically generated. Also, the software should have some sort of analytics, especially for the decision-making process and the decision makers, in which they can see where are some of the system, some of the software bottlenecks, potential friction or potential problems, where you can improve your process and improve your workflow. This is also including basically generating a common statistics of the overall process, in which you can see whether you know the whole machine works as it should. Of course, this sort of part, it's not available to the usual workforce of the agencies, basically more to the upper decision-making level. So, in a nutshell, these are the benefits of this approach. First of all, I would once again stress the full automation of the process, which is very important. It basically spreads the workload to more important tasks, and then everything is basically a web-based. So you don't have any third-party applications, and you don't rely on basically expensive updates such as, I don't know, Oracle forms and stuff like that. Now, taking away the part which is basically dealing with more or less licensing process and everything related to it, there are two other modules which will help the agency in their everyday jobs and everyday routines, especially with the movement from the basically event-driven monitoring process. You have somebody who has an issue, interference, call you, and you go and find and intervene. And now with the newer services, especially with the 5G, the monitoring tends to be constant, tends to be generating a lot of information in which you basically have much better insight into the spectrum. And this is why there are two outside modules for allowing you to communicate to your measuring system and measuring devices and your sensory base and sensory network, which is the LS Observer and the Monitor Plus. So the LS Observer would usually, on the front end of the system, you would have your sensors. You will have your network of systems feeding the overall database of the spectrum utilization. And this can be various sensors. It can be fixed mount, it can be aerial even, it can be handhelds, whatever the case. All of this information is going to be fed into the database. And on top of that information, you can have basically a smart triggers when something new is happening, when there is a new player in the spectrum that you didn't give any license to. The good thing about basically the highlight of this sensory system is basically in the fact that the computational power is in the sensor. So the sensor, instead of piling out a lot of information to your database, and you have to work, you have to have a very good throughput to get that information, and basically you have a lot of computational power to pick up information for, I don't know, 30, 50, 70 sensors. So the computational power is in the sensor. So it will basically only feed your central database with the information that is new, that is out of the ordinary. And also the sensor itself stores all that information. So this is why it will normally operate through a bandwidth that is beyond the usability for some of the other sensors which they don't have any computational power in them. The last thing that I would like to show you is basically using all that information from the sensors in order to generate a map, of your of all the spectrum usage or data or frequency allocation. So the process goes that you receive the data from your sensors, and then you put it into your database. So you basically collect all the data which is important, and fuse the data depending on the various locations of the sites and the frequency, which basically would generate you a common operational picture of what is happening out there, which is in real time, and it depends only on the measuring information, which is also very important, because when you are generating maps, from the sensors, you basically have to determine where the transmitter is, because you have a very, very passive system. And all this information fed into the database will allow you to do that. And also very, very important into the process of speeding up the computation of the map is that this system can already use the information which is stored in your database on where the transmitters are for a specific frequency spectrum. So this can be shown here. If I can have somebody pressing here, it will show on the different frequency ranges how it will change, and it will show your transmitters. I don't have a mouse here. If I have a mouse, it will show. Are you operating the presentation? Can you press the play button? No, it should be here. It's over here. Yeah, that will be it. So you will see that you can basically create a query on which frequency spectrum you would like to, which frequency range you would like to see. It will generate the spectrum utilization, and actually it will generate where the transmitters are and what are the signal levels. So these are the typical application for this. Once you can basically visualize the information coming from the field, you can use that for various tasks, whether it's analysis, whether it's identification of some of the station which are emitting and you don't know. You can allocate white space opportunity, which is also very, very, very important. You can validate whether the licensing conditions that you have provided are in place and whether there are no issues. So, more or less, that will be it. I believe that I kept it in 10 minutes frame. Thank you very much for your attention, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer that. Thank you very much.
So that were all the presentations for this session. So right now, if you have any questions, please ask. The presenters could answer you exactly on your questions. Any questions? Obviously, the people are getting tired through all the day. Yes.
I have one question. I was hearing all the time about fifth generation. And
Just a moment for the mic.
Hi, my name is Trakov Žarko, representing a public company, Macedonian Broadcasting. My question is related to the 5G benefits that we've been hearing a lot during the presentation, and having in mind that it will have influence on the final beneficiaries. My question is there any analysis about the negative influence of the 5G to the final beneficiaries, or any knowledge about the negative influence, negative impact? Thank you.
Question is for whom?
Probably for you and for the professor, the dean, Madam Jerry's.
As I know, we don't have any results of analysis regarding the influence of health for 5G. We have some analysis for 4G, but for 5G we don't have. That will be short answer. Because the 5G is not implemented in a lot of countries, there is no time to testing that influence on human health and everything.
Okay, I would say also the same with my colleague, because the 5G is not already deployed fully, and there are basically two environments for testing. One is the working environment for the engineers where they work while they are on site, and the other is for in the living environment for the regular people or the humans. But to my best knowledge, so far there is no such research done in any academic institutions.
Somebody else for any other question? Okay, no question. So I can conclude that today, first working day is finished with the working part normally. Also, this session is finished, and maybe as a conclusion for the session, I can say that here the people from the Balkan shows to everybody, probably in the past few years, 2 or 3 years, that they can work together and cooperate and coordinate, especially in the SEDI working group, and nobody has any objection or was against the other. That will be all. I will ask from the technical people, technical staff, to show the information about the buses. Can you show the information, please? There will be 2 buses. As I know, the first one will wait here in front of the hotel at 6:30, and everybody who is interested to take a tour, city tour through Ohrid, will have to, here is it, this is the information. So exactly at 6:30 will be the bus will wait for the city tour, and the other bus is starting at 8 o'clock p.m. at the same place to the restaurant. So thank you very much for the attention.